You are standing on a muddy riverbank at dawn. The air is thick and humid. The Hooghly River moves slowly in front of you, wide and brown, carrying silt from far upstream. Small wooden boats drift past, their bamboo masts creaking softly. Fishermen haul in nets by hand. A group of women wash utensils at the water's edge. Behind you, there are no grand colonial buildings, no Howrah Bridge, no tram bells, no Victoria Memorial rising in marble. Instead, there are thatched huts, palm trees, patches of cultivated land, and 3 small settlements stretched along the riverbank. This is not Calcutta. It is Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta, and the year is around 1600. Today, Calcutta is one of India's largest urban centers, home to millions. But in the late 16th and early 17th century, this region was not yet a city in any meaningful sense. It was part of the Mughal Empire within the Suba of Bengal, one of the richest provinces under Emperor Akbar and his successors. Bengal was famed for fertile soil, rice production, fine textiles, and vast river networks. But this exact stretch of land was peripheral. The settlements of Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta were small riverine villages under local zamindars, most notably the Sabarna Roy Chowdhury family, who held revenue rights under Mughal authority. There was no unified urban grid, no stone-paved streets, no formal fortifications. What existed was organic, shaped by rivers, monsoons, and trade currents. If you walked inland from the river, the ground became uneven and marshy. This region formed part of the Ganges Delta system. Seasonal flooding was normal. Large tracts were wetlands and mangroves. Much of what later became colonial Calcutta was originally low-lying and flood-prone. The villages sat on slightly raised ground along the Hooghly's edge because proximity to the river meant survival. The river was not decoration. It was transport, food, communication, trade. Without it, these settlements would not exist. Of the 3 villages, Sutanuti was likely the most commercially active. Its name is often linked to suta, meaning thread, and historical records connect the area to textile production. Bengal's muslin and fine cotton fabrics were already internationally known. Weavers around the Hooghly produced cloth that moved through regional markets and into Indian Ocean trade networks. Production happened inside homes, not factories. A weaver's house had mud walls, a thatched roof, and a wooden hand loom. Cotton arrived from surrounding rural areas. Women spun thread. Men often operated the looms, though labor divisions varied. The work was slow, repetitive, physically demanding, and dependent on monsoon rhythms and stable trade. Govindapur was more agrarian. Rice cultivation dominated daily life. Bengal's climate allowed multiple cropping cycles. Rice formed the dietary backbone. A typical meal included boiled rice, lentils, river fish, and seasonal vegetables. Meat consumption varied by community. Fishing was constant. Nets were cast daily into the Hooghly and its distributaries. Fish was sustenance, not luxury. Houses were modest, bamboo frameworks with mud plaster and thatched roofing. Storms and floods damaged them regularly, and rebuilding was part of life. There were no multi-story buildings, no stone mansions, no wide roads. Paths were narrow, muddy, often waterlogged. Calcutta, the name that would later evolve to Calcutta and then Kolkata, was likely the smallest of the 3. Its exact etymology remains debated. What is clear is that it was not yet an administrative hub. There was no major fort, no mint, no imperial palace. Imperial administration operated at a distance. Revenue moved upward through intermediaries. For ordinary residents, imperial politics mattered mainly when tax demands changed. Life was local, immediate, tied to land and river. These villages contained both Hindu and Muslim communities, typical of Bengal. Small shrines and temples existed, alongside modest brick mosques adapted to monsoon conditions. Religious practice followed daily rhythms, morning offerings, river bathing, agricultural festivals. This was not a monumental sacred city. it was a working landscape. Caste and community shaped occupation. Weavers, fishermen, cultivators, traders were often born into their roles. Mobility existed, but remained limited. Bengal was deeply connected to global trade networks. Portuguese traders had established a presence upriver at Hooghly in the 16th century. Armenian and Gujarati merchants operated across the region. Yet Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta were not dominant ports, they were secondary nodes. Boats carried salt, rice, textiles, oil, timber. Markets formed along the riverbank. Currency circulated, but barter persisted. Everything depended on river depth and political stability. These settlements were fragile. Cyclones could flatten houses, river channels could shift, disease spread easily in humid conditions. Malaria and waterborne illnesses were common. There was no centralized sanitation. Drinking water came from ponds or the river. Life expectancy was lower than today. Infant mortality was high. Stability was measured in harvests, not decades. By the late 17th century, European trading companies competed for Bengal's wealth. The English East India Company sought a secure base after conflicts elsewhere in the region. In 1698, the company acquired zamindari rights over Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta from the Sabarna Roy Chowdhury family. But in 1600, that future was invisible. There was no Fort William, no writers' building, no colonial grid, only 3 villages breathing with the river. If you stand today near BBD Bog in central Calcutta, you stand on land that was once marsh and village edge. The dense colonial architecture, tram lines, and port infrastructure required drainage, embankments, and large-scale engineering unknown here in 1600. The shift from village cluster to colonial metropolis was strategic, not inevitable. Wetlands were filled, villages absorbed, agricultural land transformed into administrative core. Very little physical trace of early Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta survived. The bamboo homes, ponds, and mud paths were overwritten by urban planning. The riverfront changed from wooden boats tied to mud banks to engineered ghats and port facilities. The scale shifted from hundreds of residents to millions. Yet some continuities remain. The Hooghly still defines the city. Fish remains central to Bengali cuisine. Textile trade continues to shape identity. The city's location still reflects riverine logic chosen long before British planners arrived. Calcutta did not emerge from empty land. It grew from mud, thread, rice, and river labor. Cities can seem inevitable in hindsight, but Sutanuti, Govindapur, and Calcutta were not destined to become a colonial capital. They were one cluster among many along Bengal's waterways. Their transformation required global trade rivalry, imperial ambition, military fortification, and environmental engineering. Without those forces, they might have remained modest river villages. Today's skyline rests on that forgotten landscape, a place of fishermen, weavers, and farmers, a place where the river dictated everything. Before Calcutta, before the British, before the city. And that fragile beginning reminds us that urban power is never permanent. It is constructed, layer by layer, on landscapes that once looked entirely